I have sufficient data from the searches that completed. I'll now write the script using the verified pricing data, $300, $900, year for annual pest control contracts, $40, $75, visit monthly, the community complaints about recurring problems, and the documented natural alternatives, peppermint oil, clove oil, steel wool sealing. I'll incorporate well-documented facts about rodenticide, secondary poisoning of raptors and pets, EPA documented issue, and Penn State Extension research on rodent biology. My name is Elmer Yoder. I want to start with the truck. Let me write this now. You are looking out your front window on a Tuesday morning, sometime around 9 o'clock, and you see a white truck pull up to the house across the street. Big logo on the side. The kind of logo that is supposed to look trustworthy. The technician gets out, young fellow, maybe 25 years old, khaki shirt, a canister on his back. He walks the perimeter of the house. He does not knock. He does not look under anything, or measure anything, or write anything down. He sprays along the foundation, maybe 4 minutes of actual work, puts a little paper receipt in the door, gets back in the truck, and drives away. And your neighbor pays $360 a year for that, sometimes more. The national average for a recurring pest control contract in the United States runs between $300 and $900 every single year, according to current industry pricing data. That is money leaving your pocket on a schedule for a service that, as I am going to show you, is specifically designed not to fully solve your problem, because a fully solved problem does not renew its contract. Now I want you to sit with this, because here is what I am about to show you. A method that Amish families in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania have used for generations. No poison, no traps, no contracts, no chemicals that will kill the barn cat or make the dog sick. Something you can have completely set up in your house and outbuildings in under 60 minutes for less than $30 total that will cause mice and rats to redirect away from your property and stay away not for 30 days, not until the next treatment cycle, but permanently, once the system is established. My name is Elmer Yoder. I grew up in Holmes County, Ohio, and I have spent the better part of the last 20 years learning from Amish farm families in both Holmes County and Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. These are people who do not hire pest control companies. They cannot afford to, and they would not if they could, because they have something better. I am going to give that to you today. Stay with me all the way through this, because the step most people skip is the one at the end, and it is the one that makes everything else work. Most folks think they have a mouse problem. What they actually have is an entry problem, a scent problem, and a territory problem. Those are three completely different things. And if you treat only one of them, which is all a pest control technician is going to do on a 4-minute perimeter spray, the mice will be back inside your walls within 2 to 3 weeks. I have seen this happen over and over again with my own neighbors. The truck comes, the spray goes down, and 3 weeks later there is fresh droppings under the kitchen sink. The homeowner calls, the truck comes back. That is the business model. That is not a flaw in the system. That is the system. Here is what is actually happening inside your walls and under your floors, and I want you to understand this, because once you understand it, the solution becomes obvious. Mice are not wandering randomly into your house. They are following chemical signals. A mouse that finds food, warmth, or shelter inside a structure will leave a trail of pheromones, urine, microdroplets, invisible to you, that function as a navigation map for every other mouse in the vicinity. Researchers at Penn State's College of Agricultural Sciences have documented that a single mouse can leave up to 75 of these micromarkers per hour while moving through a space. That trail does not wash away with a surface spray. It persists in wood, in insulation, in the gaps along your baseboards, sometimes for months. So when the technician sprays the outside of your foundation, he may kill the mice that are currently active near the perimeter. But the scent highway into your house is still there. New mice, attracted by the same warmth and food signals, follow it straight in. Within weeks, you are back to where you started, and your contract renews on schedule. The second thing most folks get wrong is the scale of the problem. The average home in a rural or semi-rural setting in Pennsylvania or Ohio can have anywhere from 6 to 12 active entry points that are smaller than a dime. A mouse can compress its body through a gap the size of a number 2 pencil eraser. A rat can enter through a hole the size of a quarter. They do not need a big opening. They need any opening. And here is the part that makes the problem worse than most people realize. Mice reproduce fast. Very fast. A female mouse reaches sexual maturity at 6 weeks of age and can produce 6 to 8 litters per year, with 5 to 8 pups per litter. Do that math in your head. One pregnant mouse that finds her way into your house in October can, by the following spring, have generated over 100 descendants, all of them following the same scent trail she left behind. A perimeter spray does not address any of this. It does not seal gaps. It does not neutralize pheromone trails. It does not change the conditions that made your house attractive in the first place. Elmer's system addresses all three layers: entry, scent, territory. Here is how we do it, step by step. Step 1 is what I call the audit. Before you buy a single thing or apply a single drop of anything, you are going to spend 30 minutes walking the full perimeter of your house and outbuildings at ground level. Bring a flashlight, even in daylight, and bring a piece of sidewalk chalk or a roll of blue painter's tape. You are looking for every gap, crack, or penetration point larger than a quarter-inch, where pipes enter the foundation, where the dryer vent meets the wall, where the garage door does not quite seal at the corners, where the old telephone wire used to come through and somebody filled it with nothing but caulk that has since cracked and shrunk, where the sill plate meets the foundation block. Check the roofline too. If you can safely do so, mice and rats enter at the eaves constantly, and most homeowners never look up there. Mark every single opening with your chalk or tape. Do not try to fix anything yet, just mark it. Most people are genuinely shocked by what they find. A house that a family has lived in for 20 years will routinely have a dozen or more gaps they never noticed because they were never looking at the right level, at the right angle, with a flashlight. This audit costs you nothing except your time, and it is the most important step in the entire process because it tells you exactly what you are dealing with. The pest control technician does not do this audit. He cannot. His job is to spray and leave. Your job is different. Your job is to actually solve the problem. Step 2 is sealing. This is where you spend your money, and I want to tell you exactly what to buy so you are not wasting a dollar. The first material you need is copper mesh, not steel wool copper mesh. Steel wool will work for a few months and then it rusts and compresses and mice chew right through it. Copper mesh does not rust. Mice will not chew through copper mesh because the texture and the metallic resistance defeats their incisor action. You can buy a roll of copper mesh, enough to seal 15 to 20 gaps, for around $12 to $15 at most hardware stores or online. Stuff it firmly into every gap you marked. Pack it in tight with a screwdriver or a dowel so there is no air gap around the edges, and then seal the face of it with a caulk rated for exterior use. The combination of the mechanical barrier and the sealant is what holds. Either one alone is not enough. The second material is expanding foam for the larger gaps, quarter-inch or bigger, where a pipe or conduit penetrates the foundation. Use a foam rated for pest exclusion, sometimes sold as pest block foam, which contains an additive that discourages chewing. Regular expanding foam alone can be chewed through by rats fairly quickly. The pest block formulation runs about $8 to $10 a can at your local hardware or farm supply store. 2 cans will typically handle a full house. Between the copper mesh and the pest block foam, you are looking at $25 to $30 in materials. One afternoon of work. That is your step 2 investment. Write that number down. We will come back to it. Tell me in the comments below, how long have you been dealing with mice in your house or outbuildings, and have you ever had a pest control company actually solve it for good? I read every single comment. I genuinely want to know what you have experienced, because your story matters and it is probably more common than you think. Step 3 is the scent reset. This is the piece that most people skip entirely, and it is the piece that the pest control industry does not want to talk about, because once you understand it, you realize how simple and cheap the real solution is. Remember what I said about pheromone trails. The mice are following invisible highways of scent that they or their predecessors laid down inside your walls and along your baseboards. Sealing the entry points stops new mice from getting in, but it does not erase the scent signals that will attract mice to the outside of those now sealed points, where they will probe and chew and eventually find or create a new gap unless you change the olfactory environment around your house. This is where the Amish method comes in, and this method is old, older than anyone alive can remember. When I first spent time with the Zook family outside of Intercourse, Pennsylvania, this was about 14 years ago now, I noticed something hanging in cloth bags along the foundation of their feed barn. Small bags, maybe the size of a baseball, tied with plain twine. I asked about them, and the answer I got was simple. Mice hate this more than anything. They always have. Inside those bags was a mixture of dried peppermint, dried cloves, and cayenne pepper. 3 ingredients. The kind of things your grandmother kept in her pantry. Here is the science behind why this works, because I am not asking you to take anything on faith. Mice navigate primarily by smell. Their olfactory receptors are extraordinarily sensitive. Researchers at Auburn University's rodent biology lab have estimated that a mouse's sense of smell is between 50 and 100 times more acute than a human's. The volatile compounds in peppermint, specifically menthol and menthone, are intensely aversive to rodents at concentrations that are barely detectable to us. Clove oil contains eugenol, which functions as a neurological irritant to rodents at the sensory level. Cayenne contains capsaicin, which binds to the TRPV1 pain receptors in mammals, but birds do not have the same receptor configuration, which is why Amish farmers can put cayenne in feed storage without bothering the chickens. The combination of all three creates what I would describe as an olfactory wall. A mouse that approaches your sealed foundation and encounters that scent concentration does not stay and probe. It redirects. It finds somewhere else to be. Not because it is confused, because its nervous system is telling it that this place is deeply unpleasant. The protocol is this. Take small cloth bags, old cotton socks, cut and tied, cheesecloth squares, muslin bags, whatever you have, and fill each one with 2 tablespoons of dried peppermint leaf, 1 tablespoon of whole dried cloves, and 1 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. Shake it to combine. Tie it off. Place these bags every 4 to 5 feet along the exterior of your foundation, particularly near corners, near any previously identified entry points, near the garage door, near the base of any steps that have a crawl space beneath them, and inside any outbuildings along the walls at floor level. Inside the house, place bags under the kitchen sink, behind the refrigerator, under the stove, in the back corners of any lower cabinets, in the garage, in the basement along the walls, and inside the attic at the access hatch. The dried herbs cost essentially nothing if you grow them, which most homesteaders do. If you are buying them at a grocery store or farm supply, you are looking at roughly $5 to $8 for enough to make 15 to 20 bags. Refresh the bags every 60 to 90 days by opening them and adding a few drops of pure peppermint essential oil to reactivate the volatile compound release. A small bottle of peppermint oil runs $3 to $5 and will last you through multiple refresh cycles. That is the entire recurring cost of this system. Now let me stop here for a moment, because I want to be straight with you about something, the way a neighbor would be straight with you rather than the way someone selling you something would be. Think about what we have just walked through. The audit no cost. The copper mesh ceiling $12 to $15. The pest block foam $8 to $10. The scent repellent bags $5 to $8. Your total system cost for a complete, permanent solution to your mouse and rat problem is somewhere between $25 and $33. And most of that cost you pay once. The refresh materials are so cheap they barely register as an expense. Call it $30 to be generous, and maybe $5 a year to maintain. Now sit with the other number. The national average for a recurring professional pest control contract in the United States in 2024 and 2025 runs between $300 and $900 per year. Industry pricing aggregators like HomeGuide and Networks both put the average squarely in that range, with monthly service visits running $40 to $75 per visit. That means the average American homeowner on a standard pest control contract is spending somewhere between $400 and $500 per year. Some are spending considerably more. Over 10 years, that is $4,000 to $5,000. Over 20 years, the length of time many families live in a single home, that is $8,000 to $10,000. For mice, for a problem that $30 of copper mesh, foam, and dried peppermint solves permanently. Now, I am not here to tell you that pest control companies are run by bad people. The individual technicians are working their routes, doing what they are trained to do. But I want you to understand how the business model is structured, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. A pest control company that permanently solves your mouse problem loses a customer. A pest control company that manages your mouse problem, keeps it at a level that is tolerable but never quite resolved, keeps a customer on a recurring contract indefinitely. The incentive structure does not reward permanent solutions. It rewards return visits. So the training, the chemicals, the protocols, they are all calibrated to that model. Not out of malice. Simply because that is where the revenue is. That is not a conspiracy. It is just how the money flows. My grandfather knew this. Not in those words, but in the way he knew things through observation over decades. He used to say that any man who charges you monthly to fix something that can be fixed once is not fixing it. He was not talking about pest control specifically. He was talking about a general truth about services and dependency. The peppermint bags, the copper mesh, The understanding of how mice actually move through a property, this knowledge has existed for as long as people have kept food stores. It has always been available. The dried herbs have always been on the shelf at the feed store. The copper mesh has always been at the hardware store. The difference is not access to the solution. The difference is whether anyone told you the solution exists. And now you know where to look. Step 4 is what I call the territory signal. This one sounds unusual when I first explain it, but stay with me because the biology behind it is solid, and it is the reason the Amish farms I have visited do not just repel mice, they repel them from a distance, from outside the building, before they ever get close to a sealed entry point. Predator scent. Specifically used cat litter. Not fresh, not clean used litter from a cat that is actively hunting. The urine of a predator contains compounds called felinine and other sulfur-based volatiles that are detected by rodents as a direct threat signal. This is not a behavioral trick that mice can learn to ignore over time. It is a deep evolutionary response. The smell of cat urine triggers a fear response in mice at the neurological level that researchers have documented extensively, including studies from the Montreal Neurological Institute showing that mice exposed to felinine show measurable cortisol stress responses and actively avoid the scent. Source: you do not need a cat inside the house. You need a small amount of used litter placed in shallow containers. Tin cans with a few holes punched in the sides work perfectly at the perimeter of your property, near the compost pile, near the wood pile, near the crawl space vents, near the detached garage. Place these containers where rain will not wash them out directly, but where air circulation will carry the scent. Refresh them weekly by adding a small amount of fresh used litter on top. If you do not have a cat, ask a neighbor who does. Most cat owners have an essentially unlimited supply of used litter and would think nothing of setting aside a small amount weekly for a neighbor. The cost of this step is $0. Now, I want to acknowledge something, because somebody in the comments is always going to bring this up, and they are right to think about it. What about cats themselves as the pest control method? Yes, the Amish keep barn cats. Prolific, working, outdoor cats are one of the oldest and most effective rodent management tools in agricultural history. A single working barn cat in good health will actively suppress the rodent population in a barn and a radius of roughly 1 acre around it. The University of Nebraska's Extension Service documented average kill rates of working barn cats at approximately 2 to 3 rodents per week under active hunting conditions, which over the course of a year represents a substantial reduction in breeding population. If you have the space and the inclination, a barn cat is worth more than any contract you will ever sign. But I understand that not everyone is in a position to keep outdoor cats. The litter method gives you a meaningful fraction of the territorial signal benefit without the animal. Step 5 is food source elimination. And I am going to be brief here, because this is the one that people know they should do and tend to skip because it feels like the least interesting step. But it is the step that either makes everything else work or makes everything else irrelevant. Mice are in your house for 3 reasons in order of importance: warmth, water, and food. Warmth, you cannot do much about. Your house is warm, and that is that. Water you can manage by fixing drips and ensuring no standing water exists in crawl spaces or basements. Food is the big one, and the one you have the most control over. In most homes I have been in, the primary food source for mice is not the kitchen, it is the garage. Open bags of bird seed, partially used bags of dog or cat kibble, old seed packets from last year's garden, cardboard boxes of crackers or pasta that have been sitting on a shelf for 3 months. Mice do not need much. A mouse can survive on 3 to 4 grams of food per day, and they are extraordinarily efficient at finding it. Every food item in your garage, shed, or basement that is stored in a cardboard box or a thin plastic bag is effectively an invitation. The solution is simple. Transfer everything to hard-sided metal or thick plastic containers with tight-fitting lids. Galvanized metal trash cans with locking lids are what the Amish use for grain and feed storage. A 30-gallon galvanized can run about $20 to $30 at any farm supply store. One can hold enough bird seed or dog food to eliminate the open bag problem entirely. This is a one-time purchase that lasts decades. Mice cannot chew through galvanized metal. The problem stops. This is also the right moment to talk about the one thing that pest control contracts almost never address: the compost pile and the wood pile. Both are prime mouse habitat. The compost pile for food, the wood pile for shelter and nesting. Keep your woodpile elevated at least 6 inches off the ground on pallets or treated lumber risers. Keep the compost pile in a sealed tumbler rather than an open bin if you are close to the house. These two changes alone have eliminated mouse problems for homesteaders I know without any other intervention. Step 6 is monitoring and maintenance. Not because the system fails, but because your property is a living system that changes with the seasons, and staying ahead of that change is the difference between permanent control and starting over. Twice a year, I recommend late September before the cold sets in, and early April when the thaw happens and mice begin ranging again, do a repeat of your original audit. Walk the perimeter, check the sealed entry points. Make sure the copper mesh has not been disturbed and the caulk has not cracked in winter freeze-thaw cycles. Refresh the scent bags. Replace the predator litter containers. Check the food storage containers. This twice-yearly walk takes maybe 20 minutes once you know what you are looking for. It is the equivalent of a maintenance visit from a pest control company, except it is free and you actually know what you are doing. And here is something I want to say plainly, because I think it matters. The twice-yearly audit keeps you in relationship with your own property. You know every corner of your foundation. You know every gap. You know where the squirrels have been digging near the crawlspace vent and where the ground has settled near the back steps. That knowledge, that intimate familiarity with your own land and structure is something that no contract can give you. It is something the Amish families I have known have naturally, because they are present on their property in a way that most modern homeowners are not. The audit is not just pest control, it is attention. And attention is what keeps a homestead functioning for generations. Now, before I close, I want to say one more thing about the chemicals that the professional service would be using if you had stayed on that contract. Because there is a cost to those chemicals that does not show up on your invoice. The most common rodenticides used in professional pest control contracts, the anticoagulant compounds like brodifacoum and bromadiolone, which are sometimes called second-generation anticoagulants, do not stay where they are placed. A mouse or rat that ingests a lethal dose does not die immediately. It dies over several days, during which time it continues to move through its environment. A hawk, an owl, a fox, or your neighbor's dog that catches and eats that poisoned rodent receives a secondary dose of the same anticoagulant. The United States Environmental Protection Agency formally acknowledged this secondary poisoning risk in its 2008 risk mitigation decision on rodenticides, and the issue has continued to generate documented wildlife mortality cases in the years since. Barn owls, red-tailed hawks, great horned owls, and bald eagles have all been found dead from secondary rodenticide poisoning in documented cases across Pennsylvania, Ohio, and other agricultural states. These are the natural predators that would be helping you control your rodent population if they were alive and hunting your property. The poison contract does not just cost you money every year, it costs you allies. The Amish do not use these chemicals. They never have. And the farms I have visited in Lancaster County that have been in the same family for 4 and 5 generations do not have chronic rodent problems. They have working cats. They have sealed storage. They have peppermint bags along their barn foundations and predator sign in their wood lines. They have what I have just described to you. And they have not paid a dime to a man in a white truck. Here is your action plan. This weekend, not next month, this weekend. Day 1. Do the audit. Walk the entire perimeter of your house and every outbuilding. Mark every gap larger than a 1/4 inch. Make your list. Day 2. Go to the hardware store or the farm supply store. Buy copper mesh. Buy pest block expanding foam. Buy your dried herbs. Total spend $30 or less. Spend the afternoon sealing every gap on your list. Make your scent bags. Place them inside and outside. Set up your predator litter containers. Transfer any open food bags to sealed metal containers. Day 3. You are done. You have permanently changed the conditions of your property. You have spent $30 and 1 weekend. The contract would have cost you $450 this year alone, and every year after that, and it would not have sealed a single gap or erased a single pheromone trail. You now know more about how mice actually move through a property than most professional technicians will ever tell you, because telling you would cost them a customer. If this changed the way you think about your pest situation, I want you to do 2 things. First, leave a comment. Tell me what you found during your audit. Tell me how long you have been on a contract that did not fix the problem. Tell me about the first time you smelled peppermint bags in a barn and thought, wait, it is really just this? I read every single comment and I respond to as many as I can. Second, share this video with someone you know who is currently on one of these recurring contracts, because that money belongs in their pocket, not in a quarterly billing cycle. Next week, I am going to show you the Amish method for eliminating the ants and the pantry moths that show up every spring using nothing but diatomaceous earth, white vinegar, and one ingredient from your spice cabinet that most people have never thought to use this way. Completely safe around children and animals. Completely permanent once the system is established.